Drake and his allusions that, the whole industry is against him, which he low-key is right there, because I think a lot of people in the industry do secretly hate Drake, just not Kendrick Lamar. But that they're actively blackballing him and keeping his album from getting the streams it would have gotten otherwise. Let's check that out. Anthony Fantano kind of had a little video on this. Let's give this one a watch.
Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And we really need to jump in here and do a Drake fan base wellness check, because I'm starting to get concerned given some of the narratives and fears and paranoia that seems to be pervading in the Drake fan base with the release of his new collab album with Party Next Door, Some Sexy Songs for You, which, mind you, is a record that has not even been out for a full entire week yet, and these people are already worrying about the numbers. Like, the Billboard hasn't even updated for this album yet. And when that eventually happens, this new Drake LP may in fact do pretty well. I mean, considering the conditions under which it's being released, I actually think the performance of this record thus far is impressive, because of course Drake is collaborating with a much smaller artist on his own OVO label for this record. This is not the massive industry attention demanding team up of, like his 21 Savage album. The music on this record, comparatively with past
Before we keep going, we did my full reaction to Some Sexy Songs for You like a week ago, somewhere around there. You can check it on YouTube to get the overall kind of feelings about it. But the fact that they were complaining, what they were complaining about is that Drake was being stifled. His numbers were being tampered with. He wasn't getting the same attention and push as he should have gotten, especially on like streaming sites. The fact that he even did close to 250, I don't know the exact number he did, it was somewhere around there. The fact that he did that, as Fantano here, Melonhead, alluded to, after everything that has happened from this past year with Kendrick and the whole industry just stomping all over his head. That Daft Punk line coming back full circle though. Like, he said you want to walk around like Daft Punk, headshots for the year. He was not lying. The fact that he's following all that up, and he followed the Super Bowl halftime show where he called Drake a pedophile in front of 130 million people. And the fact that Drake decided to drop an album right after that, and it still sold as good as it is, should be a sign that he is not being stifled.
Drake releases is very low-key, very spacey, very R&B driven, not a whole lot of like straight up rap tracks. There wasn't a really huge...
Which is another point. Not only was it a project, but after all that, it was a mellow R&B project with not many like for sure hits on there, maybe 2 to 3 off top, with an artist named Party Next Door, who is not necessarily a household name. Like, outside of, the culture that people obviously know Party Next Door because of association with Drake and OVO and whatever, most people don't know who he is. So nobody cares that they're collabing outside of the culture. It's not like him teaming up with the Future when Future was a superstar in his own right, or 21 Savage, who was borderline superstar in his own right. This is a Party Next Door whose last album did not do shit. So it's not like he was putting out like this banger of a project that just was not getting pushed.
Huge big promotional rollout for this album, no massive single teasing toward the record or big music video coming out of the gate to bring the album some extra virality. Drake currently right now is obviously not on great terms with his label UMG, given that he is suing them, so it's kind of surprising that this album is coming out to begin with, as you would think both he and UMG would want to avoid each other at all costs. right now, but this record still saw the light of day. Obviously, Drake's image too has taken quite a few hits given the way that he lost in that beef against Kendrick Lamar. But look, despite all of these obstacles right now in front of the boy, the album seems to be doing relatively well, netting millions of streams across its 20 plus tracks. I mean, yeah, I regret to inform all of the Drake haters who thought that he might disappear after this whole thing that he is here to stay, musically speaking. But yeah, for the most part, the reception of this record so far has been more or less what I would have expected from your average Drake project. To the Drake fans, it's the greatest and most amazing thing he's ever put out. It's mind-blowing and some of his best work to date. And
I also don't get it because like I listen to it. I would consider myself a Drake fan. Yes, I do think he's a cornball, but I thought he was a cornball since the early days of Drake. I like his music. I've liked all his music. Well, not to say all, but I've liked a lot of his music. And why are we gonna sit here and act like all of a sudden he ain't getting love, he ain't getting attention when it's been very well talked about? Far discussed is like, is Drake falling off? People been saying that for a while now, before Kendrick Lamar even hopped on this whole thing. Because it ain't like his last few projects have necessarily been tearing the world apart. They've been very divisive, to say the least. And as somebody who reacted to this and even listened to this more than once, I can easily say this is probably his worst project that he's ever put out. It's right up there.
And for the Drake haters, it's all complete garbage. Every song is terrible, no good songs, and the bad songs are all the songs. Again, mostly what I would have expected, but I think in the wake of the beef, these positions are a little more polarized than they would have been in the past, but still, the same flavor of polarization. And again, the record, for what it's worth, seems to be doing relatively well, but for the Drake fans who have a real issue with living in reality, or at least in a reality where Drake is not the biggest and most beloved artist of all time, the record is doing well, but maybe not well enough by their standards, because it's not enough for this album to go number 1 or top 5 or top 10. It's got to be like, record breaking and topping every other artist out there he's competing with, especially Kendrick. And if it's not doing that, then something must be afoot. So of course you have total psychos in the OVO fan base sniffing around what few numbers they can get a hold of now at this very early stage of metrics on this album coming out. And you are starting to see crash outs like the one that we have up here on the screen right now, where there's this like concern about the numbers that we're seeing from Apple Music and other streaming platforms versus Spotify. Why is there such a gap? Why is there such a difference? Why is there such a split? Is the boy being blacklisted? It's a conspiracy, I tell ya, a conspiracy. The industry hates Drake. Nobody wants to see him succeed. It's over. It's over. Okay, let's try to get a goddamn grip here. First off, again, we're not talking about a full week of official numbers yet that have been logged into the Billboard charts, and when that all...
I also don't get this, because if you are a fan of an artist and you like said album and you like said project, why the hell do you care what their numbers were? I've never understood that. I get that having chart success, going platinum, all that has been a thing in music, and especially hip hop, for as long as I can remember basically its existence. But if you are truly a fan of Drake and you like the music and you like this album, why do you care the numbers it does in the first week? Do you like the music? Then listen to the music. Not everybody's going to like what you like. This fandom, it's very weird, and it goes too far sometimes.
Eventually happens and gets counted up, this album may in fact end up charting very well. Look, even if commercially Drake ends up faltering on this record a little bit, there are some very logical reasons as to why, especially when it comes to this Spotify gap. I mean, first off, maybe the Apple Music numbers are more impressive because Drake does actually have a promotional agreement with Apple Music itself. His ties with them seemingly run pretty deep.
Now that I did not know. So all those memes, all those posts about, the difference between Spotify and Apple seem pretty reasonable at this point when you're just like, he has a promotional partnership with that platform. They are paying him or whatever, vice versa, to have this album promoted. So of course there's a financial benefit behind it being promoted on said platform. Duh. Also, weren't you suing Spotify? If I'm Spotify, I'm not going to do anything extra for you than I would any other artist. I don't care if you're Drake. You're suing me.
And then in regards to Spotify, can we please recall that Drake roped Spotify into his series of statements against his
bingo, ding dong, exactly what I just said.
Label, claiming they actively took part in astroturfing the popularity of Not Like Us. I mean, look, we've done numerous videos on this channel about the ways in which Spotify cuts down the potential of success on their platform for smaller artists, for experimental artists, more obscure artists broadly. That very much is a thing that happens. And I think a lot of users of the Spotify platform and all music streaming services, honestly, don't necessarily understand how they work or how a lot of engagement on them occurs. Even if you're a fan of this channel, you may in fact be under the false presumption that a lot of people might log on to one of these platforms in the same way that you do, looking to hear a very exact specific thing that you already have in mind, when it is in fact the case that most people get onto a platform like Spotify, pretty much being herded like schools of fish into various pathways that are created for them through playlists and algorithmic suggestions and so on and so forth. So even if Drake is currently getting some playlist promotion behind this new PND project, which he very much in fact is, there are other more.
And despite all that, he's still on the cover of Rap Caviar. There are other rap playlists. Like, he's still on the cover of playlists, which is a big part of success on Spotify. So they are still clearly pushing you and promoting you. They're not suppressing you if you are still showing up. But they might not be doing what they used to do for you, which is put you on every single playlist they had. Facts, that happened. Go look that up.
Or less visual ways through which Spotify can essentially disincentivize listeners to stumble across this record and listen to it. That may in fact be what is happening here, but I don't want to buy into this narrative that a lot of Drake fans are pushing, that this is some like kind of David and Goliath moment where some great injustice is being suffered because Drake isn't getting the promotion that OVO fans think he deserves. Because remember, again, Drake's public statements against Spotify, which may have in fact led to a bridge being burnt where the platform maybe didn't want to promote him like they usually do this time around for this new record. Those statements were in regards to him claiming Spotify nefariously took part in some kind of, secret cabal type orchestrated situation to force a Kendrick Lamar diss track onto everybody and fake its popularity. That's not the same thing as Drake, the artist, taking a platform like Spotify to task because they're not giving certain artists the exposure they deserve, or they are not paying artists adequately. So again, I'll remind Drake fans that currently right now, we're not even functioning off of a full week of reported numbers yet. On top of it, if there is genuinely anything going on vis-a-vis Drake not getting the promotion that he typically does from Spotify, that might have something to do with him having personal beef with Spotify, which he has publicly voiced. And look, if that to you is something that is wrong and is unfair and shouldn't happen, the question is, what should Drake fans do past this point to remedy this? Are they willing to boycott Spotify entirely, stop obsessing over whatever Drake numbers you see coming out of the platform, stop using the platform, stop buying subscriptions? Because if you really, really hate this, but you're not willing to take money out of Spotify's pocket as a means of supporting Drake and finding other ways to pay and fund the live livelihoods of the artists that matter to you the most, what are we really doing here? Whining and complaining that a new Drake album maybe isn't doing as well as a lot of his past records have commercially. Like, as popular as the guy is, like, not every album is going to hit in exactly the same way. That's just like an unreasonable expectation. If that's your hope, if that's what you want, if that's what you know in your heart is going to happen every single time your favorite releases an album, you're going to either find yourself in a position at some point where you're disappointed, or you're forcing yourself to live in a false reality that for whatever reason you are now making everyone else's problem. But yeah,
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, it's just weird. Like, the way his fans and Kendrick fans on both sides have been acting are worse than the artists themselves. Like, the fact that they're getting so upset and so up in arms because his numbers aren't the highest ever on Spotify is the dumbest argument or reason to crash out ever. Like, there's a lot of factors that go behind this. The fact that it even did the numbers it did after everything, after this whole past year, after the Super Bowl, is a testament to Drake is still Drake. Drake still has a following. Drake's still going to put out music that gets listened to. But yeah, people might look at him differently. A little bit differently after this. And that is okay. He'll still have his fan base. Will he be as big as he ever was? Probably not. But that also has to do with the fact that he's been doing this for almost 2 decades. And he ain't necessarily putting out better music than he used to. He's just continually putting out good to occasionally great music. And it is what it is. But being blackballed, being suppressed by the same exact platforms that literally boosted the fuck out of your career, that did all of the tactics that you're claiming that UMG and Spotify and all them did for you. Do not get it mistaken. Everything he's complaining about, they have done for him. So it's just dumb. Just dumb.